today since you're here or
I mean, you're the host here. I've got some things to send. You could do.
okay, no problem. We are live. Welcome back, everyone. Prospero.Ai stock market live streams. We are here with George today, right from the beginning, but I'm still going to run through the topics quickly to start off the stream. The markets seemingly cannot make up their mind on which direction they want to go. We'll get into that with George in a few moments, but uh, where did the volatility go? They're all kind of near the trend line today, but we'll jump into that in a second. We have a few great topics to discuss today before we get into the model portfolio update at the end of the stream. Leading off today's topics, we're going to talk about a nuclear SPAC that came public that relates to Sam Altman and OpenAI. A lot of interesting points and details to go over with that. Next, a news story came out about Flutter Entertainment stock, which is the parent company of FanDuel. We'll get into them and DraftKings and if the gambling space is going to become a duopoly like a lot of other tech sectors. And then we have a theory about Apple, which was actually proposed by a member of the Prospero team, Desmond. I don't know if he watches the streams, but thanks to him for this theory he has. It's actually about the release of the new iPhone and how Apple kind of didn't fully put all their products into all of their features into the product at first. So maybe other companies will follow. Then we have Meta giving details about their new VR headset, and we'll discuss all surrounding that, what it means for Meta stock, and how Meta kind of might be taking a play out of Apple's playbook with what they've been up to. And then we have a few more stories. Caroline Ellison, if you know her name, she was the girlfriend of Sam Bankman-Fried and the head of Alameda Research. She recently got sentenced. We'll give you all the details about that story. And then this fastly approaching event, I believe it's October 10th, the Tesla Robotaxi event. Is it going to change the world and the landscape of autonomy forever? Or is it going to be a sell the news event? We'll discuss that story and everything about it. But I see George, I believe you're ready. And I think we should just before we jump into a lot of those topics, maybe talk about what we're seeing in the overall markets, what the net option sentiment for SPY QQQ are showing. Seems to me like the volatility has kind of been subdued in recent days. Is the market waiting for something? What's going on right now?
Well, QQQ net option sentiment's been very helpful, right? Like we've definitely been, that hasn't been volatile, and I think when we've seen that not be volatile, it has been a pretty bullish sign. So, like, we've actually been in pretty good shape. Just playing like a lot of the large cap tech names, like we've been getting into some utilities ones. But it's been a pretty easy portfolio for us to manage, actually, because QQQ's been solid, and we've liked how stocks like Meta, and VRT have looked the last few weeks. Then we saw new ones like PayPal that we added, as well as we did see a really nice turn in Nvidia net option sentiment. I think I might end up writing about that today as well. That got us ahead. Actually, some other people got further ahead that saw it in the morning. It was in the 50s and charged up to the 70s. So, that's when my job as a portfolio manager is pretty straightforward. When I'm seeing solid, QQQ numbers in the bull zone, I'm seeing both good numbers on some of our favorite names as well as solid trends. It's pretty easy for us to play when we see that.
Do you like a more boring, less volatile environment, or do you kind of get excited when there's like more of a challenge and more stocks moving and more going on in the markets?
I think there's like kind of like a quadrant of what I like and don't like. I think volatility is a lot of fun if you feel like you have a really good handle on the trends and when they're going to switch. But like, just for example, the way small caps have been like especially volatile, and I feel like because, and this is what we always say, you got to play into your comfort zones, right? I think because small cap stocks are not something I have as many repetitions trading, especially as it relates to using the Prospero signals, I don't have as solid of a feel around them. So I think I haven't been able to capture that volatility as well as I can capture volatility, especially swings in big tech, where we can kind of catch them at the bottom and get out at the right times and get more defensive overall in our shorts. So it really depends, but I would say a lot of it is a function of how busy I am. And lately I've been really, really busy. So having like a nice, easy market to play from my perspective is a nice little vacation from my portfolio management responsibilities as I see it.
So there is one small cap stock I want to talk about today. I'm wondering how many of our viewers have heard of this yet. We have 300 people in the stream so far. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. You'll probably know Sam Altman, who is a chairman of this stock, and it actually went public through a SPAC that was called Alt C, which he led. The company is called Oklo. It's a nuclear startup, and they're beginning construction on their first micro reactor in Idaho, which will be up and running by 2027. So, with all of the connections to Sam Altman and OpenAI, I would think this company has a pretty sure deal where they're going to supply them with energy once they can. Does that interest you? Is this a type of picks and shovels AI play that um, catches your attention?
Oh, I mean, it's very interesting, and I would say even more interesting is apparently Sam Altman's general plans for world domination. And I think the only question is it going to be actually Sam Altman that is someday ruler of the world, or will it be one of his like cyborg descendants? Probably the cyborg descendants. But man, he's got plans on plans, and I think in terms of just being a good investor and being well hedged. On one side, he's got this like Microsoft, BlackRock server deal, building it out one way. And, just in case that's not enough power for him, he's got, his nuclear plans on the other side. So, I mean, it's a good time to be Sam Altman. And I think it's going to be a good time to be Sam Altman for a long, long time.
Yeah, I don't know much about his history before this whole OpenAI thing came to fruition. I'm not sure if you do either, but is he going to go down as like one of the greatest? There's kind of Elon Musk, who's kind of a little bit older than Sam Altman. So is Sam Altman the guy of this generation? Not, I don't know how old he is, maybe late 30s or 40.
He was,
That's going to
yeah,
be,
I mean, he was the Y Combinator guy, just like kind of like a standard VC, like tech bro type investor, right? And I mean, he's certainly not that anymore. Like, he's pulled away from that crowd in terms of like, you know, how good he is at leading the pack as opposed to like investing. And I think that like a lot of the times, um, it's nothing. Like I think a lot of venture investors would say that they prefer to be the one that like support innovation, that innovate on their own, or like taking the big risks at the point at whatever point in their life they are. And a lot of VC people are former founders too. But yeah, I would say that and I kind of say standard because like there were a lot of like Y Combinator type investors that I was aware of, and kind of like not really distinguishable from the other one. I'm sure they'd say the same thing about me, that me and every other startup founder look very similar. So I don't necessarily mean any insult by that, but he's certainly distinguished himself now.
do you think it's his ability? Maybe he's taking, you've complimented Elon Musk's ability to kind of like talk around the markets and get what he wants from the markets. You think Sam Altman kind of has that skill, being able to align himself with Microsoft, and I guess a deal that worked out for both of them very well. Uh, like,
Yeah,
or what
yeah.
skill
I
could you
mean,
point to that Sam Altman has, if
well,
that's not it?
I think the most important thing as a founder, and this is something that I think about, is like you've got to have some kind of purpose, right? And you've got to have some kind of way to galvanize people, especially if you want to build like the type of world-changing technology that he has. Um, but I will say this, like OpenAI started as a nonprofit. A lot of people were like donating their time from the Magnificent Seven companies. I mean, I don't want to speak for them, but I'm not sure all of them uh, would have wanted the tech that they built to be used in this way. And I don't really think it's being used in a way that you traditionally expect a nonprofit. And like I actually saw there was a lot of like AI for good companies that like spouted up, and like that was a lot of the vibe. Like we got to make sure AI is, being used in like responsible ways. And I'm not sure I'd call this a very responsible way of using AI. So I think there's that side of it where, you'd hope that like the dream being sold whenever you get a lot of people to like build the critical mass of technology, that people are like honoring that. And like I said, I can't speak for, the communication on an ongoing basis. Maybe a lot of people are very happy with the fact that, chat gpt and this kind of technology is just in the hands of so many people. But it would be a stretch to say it was being like, used for good, especially after like a partnership with Microsoft, uh and kind of the almost like overarching understanding that like whatever we're using it for now, like it's not going to be this cheap forever.
Yeah. So maybe I wonder if AI can be used at all in the next area of the market that we're going to discuss about, which is the gambling world. Maybe some programmer out there has already got his AI program to just win and win and win. But there was news that came out today for Flutter Entertainment stock, which is the parent company of FanDuel, which set the stock higher. They announced a $5 billion buyback, as well as upping their profit guidance, particularly in the U.S. from 2.5 billion to 5 billion by the time of 2027. So doubling over the course of just a few years. Seems to me like DraftKings and Flutter have kind of separated themselves in this area. And also, it seems like a lot of areas of the market, like only one or two or three companies end up being the winners. So if you're interested in investing in this area of the market, should you be focusing anywhere else, or are these two just clearly the dominant forces in that space?
I mean, I think they just got such a good head start, and then it's about brand recognition from there. You know, I think that it's very hard unless you're doing something to screw things up. And even like I was just gonna say, even if you look at like Robinhood that had this huge growth and they pissed a lot of people off, they're starting to rebound. So like that initial name recognition and engagement is just so important. And like I've used them before. The usability is pretty nice. And I mean, if you see like MGM and Caesars, they're clearly spending a ton of money. Like, I don't watch a lot of ads, but the ads that I do see that like I think creep through into some of my streaming services, um, they they look like a lot of them I feel like are for the sports betting. So I wouldn't exactly bet against them, but you also just never really know about the usability, anything like this. I mean, the ESPN one seemed intriguing and they're doing things to like market it well. Um, but again, I just think it's very hard to get someone to switch. You might get new people, but the people that already have an app, they already use an app, especially if like, for some of these things, participation is important. If you're trying to get in, say, like, a draw with as big of a prize pool as possible, as big a people as possible, as some of these things are, like, yeah, the existing user base is a super important part of that.
Now, this is an idea I just hatched up right now, so I'm not sure if you'll like it or not. But what do you think if there was some type of legislation where there was a tax on these gambling companies that had to go like into an investment for the people that were gambling or something? So like there was a surcharge tax and it would be added into like the S&P or QQQ or whatever, and then at the end of the year you get that back. Because I'm personally getting very nervous about the amount people in our society gamble, and I'm wondering like if there's anything that's gonna happen to prevent just people losing all their money, or if there's any rules in place or what's happening now. But what do you think of that idea? If there was a tax that made people invest some of their gambling money?
Um, I think they might just end up investing it in like meme stocks if they're the type. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure it's any safer in the type of investments that might appeal to people with the gambling instinct anyway. I don't know. Maybe if you're right. Maybe if they like it had to go into like some longer term, like just like buy the market kind of thing, that would work. But I mean, I kind of look at like I think our country at this point is kind of like the equivalent of when you had like a substitute teacher that didn't care, Like, I think that's our government. Like, they don't want to really be bothered. Like, they might be asleep at the wheel, whatever. So, like, if you like suggest to that teacher, you're like, hey, do you want to teach math class like normal? They'd be like, I don't think so. Like, talk to your teacher tomorrow. Like, I feel like that's the US government. So, yeah, I think that's a great idea. And it might be something that they would do if anybody cared. But I think our government is just like trying to like sleep through the day and get paid.
Sad but true, sad but true. I see a comment from Jonathan. CZR, I believe Caesars, is surprisingly higher upside breakout than downside for casino companies. So seemingly has good Prospero signals. So maybe we'll keep an eye on that stock going forward.
Yeah, something's going on with Caesars. I mean, I will say that it does. The net option sentiment is in a disappointing trend, but I was like, oh, other than that, that is a very good ratio. Um, if you like to gamble on casino stocks, but not my favorite.
Yeah, we'll have to keep our eyes peeled. I have to thank Desmond for our next story. I mentioned him in the beginning, but we were talking yesterday about the Apple, who's a member of Prospero. We were talking about the Apple new iPhone launch and how the product is out, but the services within it are kind of not going to be available for another month or two or three. And his term was calling this a half-baked release. And if it goes well, he thinks that more companies will follow Apple's lead in this, and since they're able to get away with kind of uh, not having all of the services available. What do you think of that idea? Do you think that's kind of what could come true over in the tech world?
I think there's something weird going on in this with this iPhone, and I don't this new iPhone release, and I don't quite understand it. Like, I actually am thinking about trading in. I think I have a 15, but I'm thinking of trading because I think both AT&T and Verizon are running like you can get a free iPhone 16 if you bring in a phone of any age, which is very, very strange. Like, on both sides, right? If you're saying like, okay, we've got this like half-baked product that they might be, kind of rushing out, right? But if it was half-baked, would you really want to be like driving all the people that they are? Like, be like, oh, everybody should buy this phone. So I think there's some larger plan going on, and it might be like there might be ad revenue embedded in like getting people to search a certain way. But like that is a big loss. I feel like someone's taking in it. It only really makes sense that it's Apple. I don't see like Verizon wanting to like run those losses just for like as a charity thing. Um, but I mean, I think your actual question is just like standard capitalism bullshit. I feel like everybody's always trying to get away with. It's like how little can we like improve a product or like how shitty can we make something for someone to still buy it? So yeah, if like if Apple's just like rushing out a product and it works in their favor and like it might be buggy and people don't care or like these things are selling, maybe it will. But I think there's something weird about this whole release. Like these devices are expensive to make. Why do they just like there's got to be some other plan as to why they're kind of pushing people for free. And the only thing that really makes sense to me is it's actually a really good product, or they think it's actually a really good product. So half baked or not, they're like, let's just get it in people's hands because we think people are going to use it. They are advertising for it. Like that's the only thing that makes sense. Like that it is that Apple thinks is a good product. Like we've seen Apple release like over expensive VR headsets that they think is a good product. So Apple thinking it's a good product doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good product anymore. And that used to be something that definitely meant something, but not anymore. So I guess we'll see. But it would not surprise me that a lot of people liked it, but I'm not really necessarily hearing that. I think it's live, and I'm not hearing that much buzz about it. But comment if you tried it and like it.
Well, you brought up the headsets, which leads us perfectly into the next topic. And it was only a few months ago that we were discussing on these streams, like who's going to be the winner of the headset space, Apple or Meta, because they both were launching products. And Apple went the more luxury route with a product that was priced, I think, at 3,500, and Meta was in the I think 599 was their headset, but they actually just released news that their next headset, which is the Quest 3S VR headset, will be priced at $299, their cheapest headset yet. It's going on sale October 15th. And the Apple launch didn't go as well as they would hoped, I would say. So, is it clear already that Meta has won the headset wars?
First we can put a cap. I saw a question. I don't think they really need that training data. I mean, maybe you could say OpenAI wants like voice training data, but ultimately it's OpenAI that is powering this, to my knowledge. Um, so I don't think they necessarily really need training data unless it's voice training data. And you're right, then it might be Apple and Microsoft like combining to take a hit on it. So they start to get that voice training data and they can actually like maybe eat into Google search in a different way. So it could be that, but to my knowledge, and this is not my area of expertise, like whether or not it's a voice or like text, they're ultimately just trying to answer questions, and OpenAI is like, so they might not need that additional data, but part of it might be, speech to text has gotten a lot more accurate, so I'm not sure that that is it, but it might just be to gain market share. In terms of the Meta thing, I do think it's kind of interesting. You might say that Mark Zuckerberg is vying to be the next Steve Jobs, right? He's he had a bit of a slump, but Facebook was a pretty big innovation. Some say stolen, but other, some people say that like some of Apple's things were stolen as well, or like a lot of people like to say that it wasn't. It's like Steve Jobs gets credit for everything, but it was his team that was the innovator. So you could maybe say the same thing about Zuckerberg, but they've been on a really good, we talked about it, they've been on a really good hot streak with like a lot of their open source stuff like PyTorch, and now Llama. And then, if they have like a big device that a lot of people are using it, and they're certainly pricing it in a way that it could be a big mass produced product. A lot of people say with this contentious election that their ad revenue is going to go through the roof. So they could be, accumulating a lot of capital. They're starting to innovate in different areas. Talk about the real underdog story. If people start talking about like Apple as a company that doesn't know how to innovate, and then, Zuckerberg as like an idol in innovation, I think Steve Jobs would probably turn over in his grave if that's like how quickly his legacy of innovation fell, that Zuckerberg ended up, in a better in a better light than his beloved Apple brand.
Well, you talked about how it's an underdog story, and I was thinking like what a movie that would make of Zuckerberg's life going from like he was like the tech new kid on the block, and then he was a villain kind of in a lot of the public's eyes, and now he's kind of redeemed himself. The storyline is just crazy. If this prediction comes through and he's able to carry that out with Meta taking over the reins as like the leading innovator, um, I think no doubt it's going to be seen in Hollywood because it's just such a
Well,
good
I mean,
story arc.
he already has one movie on
I don't
him,
think he
so like
likes that one.
maybe they'll just like tack on and it could like an extended version with like with some new cuts. But no, I mean, I think Mark Zuckerberg got a press team. Like other than his weird or maybe one that he listened to, I don't know. Other than his like weird back and forth with the wrestling with Elon Musk, like you don't hear much about him. And like that's especially interesting because I heard he's doing some like I saw a special on Hawaii where he's doing some like weird land grab there. And like other than John Oliver, who digs pretty deep in stories, I hadn't heard anything about that. So, maybe he's got some agreement with other media outlets and it's just like, hey, I'll make sure nothing nothing on Facebook comes up that you don't want. Just make sure my name stays out of the bad headlines. I believe any theory, but I don't see anyone who's like turned it around more in like a few years in terms of the way they're mentioned, but he hasn't done it by like saying much. Like I don't know if anyone can pinpoint like, oh, there was this really good appearance where he said some very interesting things. I mean, he's done it the right way. At the end of the day, that is like if anybody knows like the Arrested Development, like Milford Academy thing, like children should be neither seen nor heard. Like I feel like That's what Wall Street wants from CEOs. They want you to be heard at your official events, like and to say good things and report good numbers, and then disappear for a quarter until you have to do that again. So yeah, he's kind of turned from like the nightmare CEO to like the ideal one that you want. And guess what? Look at the stock price. And that's what you see the difference. Like Meta was probably criminally undervalued because of the perception around him when it starts. And since then, it's just been up, up, up. You could say it's overvalued, but it's hard to say that because the company's completely turned around and it's operating much smarter, and he's operating exactly as you'd want a CEO to operate.
And to your point, I don't know if he hired a press team, but whatever happened, he definitely made a concerted effort to change his public perception. Like with the changing of his hair, his new outfit where he has a chain on in every interview and everything he does, his social media channels where he posts videos of him surfing and doing all these athletic things. He's trying to like relate to the public, I feel like more. So something changed and it worked. So kudos to him.
Yeah. Other than the wrestling thing, I don't know if he was like, I gotta fight back on this one. Who knows? Maybe he was like,
Yeah.
this is my chance to be a hero. As like people are starting to get mad at Elon Musk. I'm very disappointed that never happened. I like really, truly, that would have been amazing.
There's still time. There's still time. Maybe they'll beef again in the future. Uh, you know what? I have another story about FTX, but let's skip it and go to Tesla since we've brought Elon up a lot recently. They're having a robo-taxi event which got pushed back. It was supposed to be either in August or September originally. Now it's going to be October 10th. And I saw this theory floating around, and I want to get your opinion on it, of how the release of ChatGPT kind of kicked off the whole AI wave of innovation that we saw, which led to just insane amounts of gains in many stocks in the market. Just this whole AI wave that we've been on. Could this Tesla robotaxi event be that type of groundbreaking event for autonomy and a whole new area of the market of stocks that relate to that? I'm thinking Uber, Mobileye, Tesla, maybe other car stocks. But what are your thoughts on that?
I think. Sorry, one second. Um, I think it's like a very interesting. I'm not sure it's going to be the same thing because the issue with these robo taxis is that um, there's still government regulations that need to happen, right? And I get, wait, what date is it? Is it after the election? No, not
October
right.
10th.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I think that's just the big problem. I think it could get a lot of people excited, and people are excited about AI. That uh, people are excited about AI enough that you might get like a little bump, but I don't think it's going to be the same wave because there's like, I think we always kind of talk about it with self-driving cars, and it's like there's a legislation piece and a technology piece. And the technology piece, I would say, especially for Tesla, it's there. It's not perfect, but it's going to have to learn on the road how to get perfect. And ultimately, I think it's going to be way better than human drivers. So I don't mind that. I don't particularly want that to happen to anyone I know, but like that's kind of the cost of progress sometimes. And I'm saying that's the cost of progress, not saying like it would one thing if people didn't get into car accidents and die, right? Like they already do that, right? The fact that it might happen at the hands of a robot versus a human, that doesn't really bother me that much, although it really bothers some people. But they're going to have to do that to get more accurate, to learn from mistakes, things like that. But the promise of what they offer is there. So I think I think the big difference between something like Chat GPT and even like an exciting product release like that is Chat GPT was used widely immediately, right? And like it just spread like a flame. That's very, very different than like even a promising product demo. Now, if you're a company like Apple, like back in the Jobs days that had these product demos that like everybody got excited about, um, that was a bit different for them. But we haven't really seen those days anymore. And even then, it wasn't necessarily something that like affected much more than like Apple, not like the whole stock market. But no, I don't think there's that. But I do think there was a funny Elon Musk thing that is just like that I think made his character grow even more complex for me. I was watching like I saw this like 60 this old 60 minutes recently because I've been watching like a lot of space stuff. And it came on where he was being interviewed and he was basically asked why it was like in 2012. It's like, why are you running? Like you have no training and like why are you running SpaceX? You have no training in this. And he was just basically like, well, I studied some physics and I've read about spaceships and things like that, and it was just kind of an odd answer, um, because he he could just say like I have hired a lot of talented engineers, like, but he just kept pushing back on the fact that he'd read some books and that means that he's qualified. It just like seems like a very easy answer to say like, oh, like, well, I'm just leading this company and I have like really qualified people. It kind of was like an odd, it was like an odd need to like push himself up and not like necessarily even elevate the very talented team that he had. And that's kind of like I feel like that's kind of like you could say is kind of central to what is great and also frustrating about him sometimes, right? Because like he does have this power to like accelerate things on his own, and like you kind of need to be a powerful, self-effacing person to be able to do that. But at times when he's like the most scary or annoying, you're kind of just like, well, you don't really need to be that like self-involved, right? Like, but I thought that was an interesting thing because it just seemed like something where it's just like it's a very puzzling, it's like an opportunity to just like talk up your team that he just didn't take. Found that to be very odd.
So there's been hints all along, but just one follow-up on this autonomy topic. So it sounds like to me the real interesting thing to see will be when it's finally released, if it's adopted widely amongst the public, kind of like how you're talking ChatGPT was instantly spread throughout, and a lot of people were using it. So we're not really going to know that until it's actually released in the cars and people are either deciding to use it or not. So that's when
Well,
we can get
again,
excited.
that's like legislation, right? Because like we don't know it's like released and maybe just California, where it might have these like test boundaries or like whatever. Although I'll believe it when I see it. If like other people that are like not supposed to be using it, like they're not supposed to be using it other places, are doing it. But that is kind of a funny aspect to it, isn't it? Where it's just like now that we have like software that can be pushed, so quickly and everything like that. Like we're like, yeah, it could just be one day that like all of these cars are like flipping on. And I do think if it's released federally, you will like see like a crazy bump. And I think you'll also definitely see some weird shit. I wouldn't take to the road that day if you could avoid it or like stay on surface roads or whatever. You could see some weird shit. Like I'm saying, like all in the course of progress, but you might want to give it a little bit. And maybe you don't want to be the first ones to turn on that feature.
Well, I'm not saying the media ever lies, but I can't imagine the headlines that'll come out like the first one that crashes, like what the media headlines will be. Oh my God, they'll ruin Tesla for the day. Uh, but I mean, it's no doubt one's going to crash eventually, right? So like, I mean, it's not unavoidable. So I don't know. We'll see. It'll be interesting to
No,
watch.
there's gonna be like weird shit. Like it's gonna like crash into a house when the map said that there wasn't supposed to be a house there, or like something. Like, yeah, it's like it's not even gonna just be like your run of the mill like accidents. Or like you'll see a lot of them have been like running red lights. That's something that's gonna happen. So it's just like, yeah, like don't be like, at least like most people don't do that at most. But again, it's like who knows? Like people run red lights too. Like that's where you're just like, I would be like much more like, oh, I don't know if we should let them do this if people were all that responsible. But ultimately, I think even like like a baby robot that's learning like is more responsible than the average human. So I say let them learn.
Have you seen the Office scene with Michael Scott and Dwight where he wants to drive into the lake? Have you seen The Office? There's gonna be something like that with this. I can't wait for the social media clip. There's a lake
They're
there.
delivering the gift baskets because he thinks that like the world's too modern and
Yeah.
he needs that personal touch.
All right. That's the end of that topic, but I think probably within the next year or so, we'll get a lot of great stories about it. So keep our eyes on Tesla. And Tesla stock has been performing pretty good lately. So if there's any Tesla shareholders in our stream right now, you're probably a very happy person. Someone who's not very happy is Caroline Ellison, who was Sam Bankman Fried's girlfriend and accomplice in the FTX scandal. She was the leader of Alameda Research, which was where they were sending the funds from FTX. She recently got her sentencing and she was trying to get no prison time, just 3 years of house arrest. But the judge has a pretty good quote that I'll read in a second. But she wound up getting 2 years in prison and has to forfeit over $11 billion. So quite a hefty penalty. And the judge's quote is that the FTX case is probably the greatest financial fraud perpetrated in the history of the US. And because of that, a literal get out of jail free card, I can't agree to. So I'm wondering, with your knowledge of the financial markets, um, was FTX as bad as this judge just said it was? Is it up there with the worst of all time?
I mean, I don't think anything's ever going to be bigger than Madoff just because like that went on for so long. And there was like also all this like stuff about like, people asking the SEC to investigate and then like it's just like the sheer scale of that and time is what's going to make it the biggest. But I think this ranks second. And I don't know, I think probably in terms of the number of people that have actually been prosecuted. I'm not sure how many were prosecuted in the Madoff thing. I don't really know that. But I mean, the other thing is you were talking, I was kind of thinking like, I was like, how much did she have? That's got to be like most or all of it. Like, but it's just like, I mean, that's probably a crazy part to me that they actually like, and that shows like, I'm glad she got jail time because that basically shows that they knew it was a sinking ship and pulled out their money. Right. To me, that like makes you even more guilty, like that you come out of that with like more than $11 billion. I don't know how much SPF has, but that basically is an advertisement that you've done something wrong. Not like, oh, like, I don't know, maybe Sam was doing stuff. Like, but yeah, that's like, I think if you think about that too, like that amount and the amounts that they were dealing with is I think maybe what the judge is talking about in terms of the sheer scale, because I'm not sure Madoff was dealing in those same amounts. Just like it was just like uh, it was a deep Ponzi scheme. But yeah, I mean, I think 2 years is even like a little light. I don't. I mean, was SBF sentenced yet? I think he was, right? Uh, I forgot,
Yeah, I
but
think he got 20 years, and in the little blurb I was reading, they were both facing 110 years. So I mean, she got two. So I don't know. Like, it seems pretty good for her. But the point you brought up of how she was like has to forfeit 11 billion, that's something that always makes me upset because like I feel a lot of these financial criminals, they'll profit billions, and like so say someone profits 10 billion and they're fined two. It's like, well, they still have 8 billion. You just kind of incentivize more people because the punishment doesn't fit the crime. So I'm wondering if this is kind of all of the money she made from that. It pretty much seems like it's got to be close, like you were saying, if not all.
yeah, that was the big thing with Steve Cohen. He like basically got to keep a lot of his money. Like I think it was like three-quarters of it. So yeah, I think that uh I mean, I think basically like if you're running like like if you're convicted or like he wasn't convicted, but he was like he pled, you should really have to like give all of it back to your point because like you're just not incentivizing people to play by the rules at that point.
Totally agree. Couldn't agree more. We have one more topic to get to today. We've had over 1,000 people in the stream.
Hold
Thank you
on
all for
one
tuning
second.
in. No problem. Uh, Maybe
I'm
I'll
listening.
update. Oh, George is listening. So, if you've liked the content we've discussed so far, I feel like it's been a good stream today. Like it up. Let's try to get to double digits on Twitter and YouTube. But I'll begin going through the next topic before we do our switch over. So, this one probably going to be a quicker topic, but I just want to get an update on the Trump media stock. It has gotten crushed recently. And I'm just wondering, whether you love him or hate him, there's a massive event in November. You guys probably know. You've probably heard of it. I can't imagine that this stock like doesn't get some kind of spark because of it. So, do you think it's an interesting play since it's gotten hit so hard recently?
I think the funniest like trade that I've heard recently is like hardcore liberals being like, I'm buying DJT because that way, like either way, I'll feel like I'll win if this election, like either I'll make some money or he'll lose.
The ultimate
Um,
hedge.
yeah, it's like an emotional. That's a complicated emotional hedge. Which is like, yeah, like actually, if you think about like Trump people like buying a lot of DJT, that's like the opposite. You could have the big win or the big loss. But I think people that really like Trump, I think they don't really believe it's possible that he could lose, but that's not really the right way to think about investing. So I hope if you're a big Trump supporter, you acknowledge that it is like possible. I would hate to see you like have your candidate lose and lose all your money. Maybe you want to think about a similar type of hedge there. But I think that's like we right now haven't been adding stocks because we're rolling out a new signal and we're like putting in. So I have actually had some people ask me about that. But what I will say is that it's kind of we actually like I'll tell a little secret. We actually banned GME and AMC from appearing on our picks because we didn't really want to like condone those kind of risky things. And a lot of the times they will have high option sentiment or social sentiment. And like, if we were adding stocks, I'd add it. But I'm kind of relieved that we don't have to deal with like the high option sentiment, social sentiment days with DJT because like, and it's not anything about Trump. It's more about like volatility and that I don't like the way that institutions are better positioned to play these high volatility social sentiment driven trades. So that's the relief there, but probably within the next few weeks we're gonna have everything have technical flow out and start adding tickers again. So I'm sure we'll get that same thing, but I'll probably have a similar ban that I do on other meme stocks and having it appear in our picks because I don't really want to have to deal with like supporting that being a pick.
No, I think that's a good point because there's so many stocks out there. So like, why take the risk on that when there's surer bets in the market? Um,
It's too risky both ways. Like
mhm,
in that, I would say all meme stocks.
yeah, because those stocks don't trade off value; they just trade off kind of momentum, right? So it's like when that goes, it goes. You don't really
There's
know.
no way. There's no way to reason through when it's reached its peak or its floor. Like yeah, something like that option sentiment can be pretty helpful, but the bottom falls out on those so quickly that I don't think even something like that refreshes every 3 minutes um, is is as useful as it is with other stocks.
Hmm. All right, are we ready to do the switchover?
Let's switch.
All right, we'll see you in the Prospero AI lab. Chat, stick with me. I'll be with you for the next few moments as George uh, gets all set up. Sorry for my camera today. If you guys have noticed, I'm in the basement. I got moved downstairs. Someone's occupying the upstairs office where I am today. So it's a little dark, but hang with me for a moment. George is a star anyway, so at least his camera was fully functional today. Let's get an update on the markets as we are waiting. So the QQQ is the only indice in the green right now, 0.05%. So barely hanging on. The S&P is down a quarter of a percent. The Dow Jones is down almost three quarters of a percent. And the IWM, day after day, the laggard, down 1.15%. So um, same old, basically, with how the markets have been recently. Let's see if we could get a net option sentiment reading on QQQ. Okay, so QQQ is at 52 right now, which is slightly lower than it's been at in the last couple days. It was in the higher 50s, so kind of going a little bit lower.
It's a
Let's
very
get
gloomy day today.
get the spot. Yeah, and starting to get a little cold too. Feeling like fall.
Oh God, I don't want to hear that. I know. We had like a nice spot of warm weather, and I was like, oh, maybe this might, but I think we're going cold. It's
It's that
happening.
time.
All right, let's do the update. I didn't write a letter yesterday. I've been so busy, and also like I felt pretty good about where the market was. Ooh, I got out of some. Oh, I'm not sharing yet, am I?
You are not.
Sometimes I forget. All right, here we go. Yeah, I'm just like looking at this. I'm like, oh, it's so gloomy. What did you say on SPY and QQQ?
So the QQQ is 52 and the SPY is 44.
Oh, converging. Oh. Okay.
Energy looks appealing, but we have been burned too many times. High volatility recently to engage much. We will look for consumer discretionary ads, especially as that has been on a new run. Nice
Nice,
run.
right? All right.
Small caps went back in a bad direction. We are glad we increased our exposure on the short side, but ultimately will not do too much of this. The trends today have us thinking we'll do more trimming of bad positions than adding new ones.
Okay. Let's see. This is now 347. Perfect. All right. Let's get this momentum score. My Bravo's kind of interesting. Oh God. One short. Now let's grab a consumer's Coles. No, I don't want that. I know that's gonna be bad. Ooh, JD. It's more China stuff. Okay. Oh yes. How do I want to do this? Oh, I made this really take a lot longer than I wanted it to. All to grab LVS. I don't think it was worth it. We'll see. We'll see if LVS turns out to be a big winner. I don't really expect it to. Okay. just like, I'm not going to do that. I think we're too overweight tech. TNDM, okay, sure. And then we're gonna do this. Home Depot. We did say we were going to. I don't think. Do we want Domino's? No, I think that's scraping the bottom of the barrel too much, and we're not even going to add LBS after all that. What about SE? Okay, SE, yes. We're adding more than we thought. Hopefully, we're cutting too. I don't want this. I do want this. About this, actually. TSN. What's that? Is that Taiwan Semi? Tyson Foods. Oh, I do kind of want that. All right, what am I going to do? We added this yesterday. Oh, actually, we added all this stuff. We added all that yesterday. Great. Oh, 2 days in a row. Oops. Oh, I don't want this. We're not going to get PDD. It's too much. I don't know why I'm obsessing about that. But I feel like we're just adding one too many. I don't think that technical flow is good enough, which is what I normally check. All right. We can do good on Tyson Foods. I think we only want one of these. Great. I think I feel good about that. All right. Take that over here so we can get it ready to paste. All right. And now we have 6 minutes to get the rest of this done. All right, now we need this. What we want is this. Let's unhide everything. That. Yeah, we have I really like our new method of moving based on. Oh, look at that. We're really doing a nice little week with the model portfolio. Oh, even though it's being annoying, it's always being annoying these days. It's gotten so big. I think it needs to be just like. was doing for a second. Oops. Let's be a little... I'm going to be a little aggressive here. Oh, whatever. That's funny. People were just saying Caesar was good, but not in momentum score.
LVS beats Caesars.
I mean, in momentum score, but we didn't end up adding LVS.
I wonder if there's something going on in the broader gambling space. Maybe they're all reacting to that Flutter news if the signals are decent today.
I think we have too many Broadcoms. I should really look. Now I'm going to look for... Now I want to look for dupes. That's a lot of Teslas. All right, I want 2 of these Broadcoms gone. And how many Teslas are there here? 7. All right, I think we can cut 2 Teslas. There's too many Teslas. Anything else? onesie. We haven't really been looking at that, but okay, yeah, I feel good. I feel good about this. Okay. All right, we are done.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. Thought it was a great stream. Hope everybody has a great rest of the week. Good weekend. We'll be back Monday. See everybody then.